All right, if you've watched this program, you know that we have covered a lot of issues surrounding homelessness. Couple weeks ago, we had Rocky Anderson and a few formerly homeless seniors on the program addressing the problem of senior citizens who are out on the street in the elements, homeless. And we have talked about the issues. And one of the major factors to homelessness that I think our political leaders don't understand and they kind of overlook is that there are a lot of working class people who are barely staying in their homes. There's a lot of pressure on the very difficult position of the increases of rents that a lot of people are suffering from. And with me on the program today is Maya.
Yes.
And thank you so much for joining me.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
And you've basically told me that the big problem that you've faced and suffered from is that the eviction laws in Utah are very, very difficult for tenants, and they're very, very favorable to landlords and especially big rental management companies. Mm-hmm. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience and what you've gone through? It's been how many years you've kind of dealt with this?
Yeah, I've worked. So I'm 58, and I've worked all of my life until just a few years ago, and I've had many eviction attempts against me, and it's never been for a non-payment of rent. It's never been for disturbing another neighbor or a violation of my lease or anything like that. It's been simply because they didn't like me. I am pretty severely disabled, and so I advocate for myself, and I've asked for reasonable accommodations, and I've worked with the Disability Law Center so that I can continue to remain independent. I don't want to be in an institution. So,
can you describe your disability?
Sure. So I've got 5 brain injuries. I have bipolar disorder, an anxiety disorder, a lot of PTSD, and a lot of cancer. Those are the big ones. A lot going on.
Sorry to hear that.
Yeah, that's all right.
That's difficult.
It's a lot to deal with, but yeah, it's the reason for the eviction is primarily due to they just don't like that somebody advocates for themselves. They don't like being asked for accommodations. They don't like being told, that's not fair and that's not okay. And so they're really retaliatory. And
basically just standing up for yourself and saying, I need to be accommodated for my disabilities. They've been
so specific accommodations and so
and
forth. Yes.
And kind of in a nutshell, what is it that makes that keep happening where they are at? They want you to leave. Like, what is it that they're seeing that is causing them or justifying in their minds that they need to give you an eviction notice?
So right now, the situation, I'll give you one example that's current. The situation right now is that I've been in the unit that I'm in since about 2000, I think it was 16 or 17. And I was already pretty ill. I've suffered 2 brain injuries since then. And then I've also, I also was robbed, and there was a hostage situation. So I had a huge whopping case of PTSD. And so when that started, I'm sorry, I forgot the question already. Can you ask it again? Why do they keep doing it?
Yeah, why did they say this last time?
Right.
At this point, you need to leave.
You need to keep going. So one of the symptoms of all of these injuries is my misophonia, which is a common disability with bipolar disorder, which is our sensitivity to sound, where certain sounds trigger you and they send you spiraling into either suicidality or a rage. Someone might chew gum across the room and it sounds like they've got a mic to your ear chewing their gum and so forth. Well, some of my triggers are bass stereos and people stomping on the floor and so forth. And I've got a really noisy neighbor upstairs. And I'm represented by my lawyer at the Disability Law Center. And for years, I've been, notifying them, recording the sound, sending them the sound, telling them this is harming me. I've had neurologists and PCPs and psychiatrists write in and say, this is how it harms her. She's not just annoyed, she is harmed. It exacerbates her illness. It interferes with her recovery. It makes her sick, and so forth. Yeah. And they just ignored it. And so I actually went upstairs and talked to the woman because they said, we're on it, we're on it, we're on it, but they wouldn't say for more than a year what they were on. And I went to talk to the woman just a couple of weeks ago. She said, well, the police come a lot, but no one from management has come for months. No one is. So they kind of lied to me about, but the fact that I am sending emails, because my attorney said send an email, and they said too, they said every time you're experiencing, send an email so we can address it. So they're getting 2 or 3 emails a day with recordings, and they're not addressing it. But because I'm persistent and because I follow through and because I say that's not okay, and I ask too many questions, that's an example of a tenant that's problematic. Because,
And if you didn't know about, say, the Disability Law Center, and you didn't know your tenant rights, probably you would have been out by now.
Oh,
And you would be
yes.
on the street and in a much worse position than you're in now. I
oh
would say.
yes, yeah,
And
absolutely.
so obviously this is a difficult issue, but what we were talking about pre-show was you're a property owner, you've got a apartment building,
Mm-hmm.
you've got a leasing management company, which gives you this sort of shield, and then that leasing management company hires somebody who you've dealt with many times, the Cullimore Law Firm, which is a law firm that supports landlord rights.
Mm-hmm.
And what you've experienced is that they treat you with less than humans should deserve or earn with dignity. I mean, they're not treating you with dignity, to put it in a nutshell.
Certainly not. No.
And so what would you like to say to the property owner through all of those barriers that they create, that they'd
Hello?
like, that you would like them to know?
I'd like them to know that it's difficult being poor, but usually poverty is associated with severe disability or severe illness. We've got a lot on our plate as tenants. Section 8 tenants, housing choice voucherizing is the new word for it. Tenants who are availing themselves of HUD vouchers and so forth, they have a bad rep for trashing places. And I know that there are bad tenants. What I'd like them to know is that first of all, most tenants on Section 8, they know that if they get evicted or in trouble with the landlord, they lose their housing, not just for a while, it's permanent. They are permanently, they will yank that voucher from you if you're evicted, and you don't get a second chance. And so most Section 8 tenants are just on eggshells trying to be the perfect tenant because we don't want to risk or do anything to risk losing their voucher. So that's what I would have them know about the poorest and the people using Section 8. But I would also let them know that you got to keep an eye on these the property management companies especially are really, really good at, showing one face to one population and a very different face to another population. And to just turn over the overseer, so to say, or, the property management companies, to just let them loose without closer oversight is really, really, really dangerous, because most property management companies that I've experienced are pretty horrific. They're either they're unaware of the laws and they don't want to know the laws, and so when you point them out to them, then they retaliate, or they know the laws and they're going to try and get around them, and they know how to use them against you and work them to their own favor and so forth. They're rarely on the side of the tenant or doing what's in the tenant's best interest, even when that wouldn't harm the landlord. Like, there's no harm to the landlord whether you grant a reasonable accommodation, but they're very retaliatory and punitive. So I would beg them to stay involved with the management, hold them accountable, talk to the tenants, have a representative that you trust, independent of these landlords and property companies. Have them interview tenants, talk to the tenants in the properties. How's it going? Do you feel like you're being treated fairly, and so forth? And yeah.
I have to say, many members of the Utah State Legislature own apartment buildings because they are good at being legislators / developers. And so I know a lot of them listen to this program, and a lot of them write the laws.
Yes.
And you've told me that a lot of the laws are written heavily in favor of the landlords, especially apartment building landlords. Can you describe what particular laws are written that you believe are in their favor and against?
Oh yes, there was
tenant rights?
one. There was one. Oh, I'm sorry. There was one that was recently written. I think it was just this year. It used to be that when you went to eviction court, you might be evicted, but then the judge had discretion. Like if you're a single mother with some children, and it's going to take you a while to pack, and have your father come and pick you up and haul you back to Minnesota or where you're from, that can take time. They just recently passed a law that and they took that power out of the judge's hands. And if you're evicted, you've got 3 days, and there's no mercy. The judge cannot show mercy, regardless of the situation, regardless of what happened.
3 days,
3
36
days
hours is all you have?
Is all you get. If you go to court, to eviction court, and you lose, it's my understanding. Yeah, if I read the law
after
correctly.
eviction court.
Yeah, after eviction court, when they say, okay, yeah, we're gonna honor this eviction, you're evicted, you've got 3 days, and the judge doesn't have any authority anymore. They took that authority out of the judge because I think there were some compassionate judges who were seeing that, unfortunately, I have to kind of follow the law, but they saw that it wasn't really necessarily fair. It's not always the fault of the person, when they're being evicted, and entirely the fault. There are always mitigating circumstances, I think, and unless it's just purely financial. And I think that they were showing compassion and saying, well, we're going to give them two weeks, maybe 3 weeks or something. And that just was not okay.
I want to look that up. So when we write the story,
sure,
we have a little bit more background info. Do you happen to know either the legislator that sponsored that law or the law number?
I don't. I can guess.
But I could probably ask Eric. I was trying to get Eric to come on the podcast.
Oh, I was hoping he could.
Yeah,
yes.
he can probably.
He
inform
would
us.
know. Yeah, he'll clarify that. I could take a stab at it, but I'd rather not take any, say anything.
Yeah, you mentioned we mentioned Colomar. He is the state Senate president at this point, or is he just a state senator?
Oh, I thought he was just a senator. He might have been promoted, though. I mean. Yeah,
he has a big law firm that works for apartment building owners, and you've dealt with his law firm in a particular.
Almost I think every eviction that I've ever suffered or endured it's had nothing to do with money, and it's been backed by him. So.
Yeah, and I think it's unfortunate that that tenant rights, especially that are going to prevent homelessness, as you said, you've had one foot in the street for quite a few years. Mm-hmm. Why would you not prevent homelessness if you are in a position of power and you have the ability to do so by making laws at least more lenient so that you don't have an increase to the homeless population? I mean, obviously, that's kind of a rhetorical question that I don't think you can answer, but is it just about profit? Is it just about greed, in your opinion?
I think that's a big part of it. I think a lot of it is indifference. I think there's just an indifference. It's an us versus them, for sure. It's, they're a population, they're a problem population. They put themselves into this situation. I think they dismiss and excuse themselves because, it's our fault that we're poor or sick or, whatever it is that's causing us to have one foot in the street. I think I would love to do a psychological eval of the entire Senate and legislator, because I think it's almost a sociopathic approach to government. It goes beyond indifference. The fact that there are so many open secrets about how corrupt people are and how harmful the laws are. I know for a fact that there have been many people that have written letters to their legislators and told their stories and shared them and begged them for guidance, assistance, or to take the next law that's being passed that's harmful, really seriously and so forth. I myself, on a few evenings when they were going to evict me the next day and so forth, have put in phone calls and urgent emails, and I never get a response. And I don't know of anybody that's gotten a response. And I think it's just an indifference. I don't think they want to know. I don't think they want to be aware, because once you're aware and you get to know somebody, then there's some accountability that develops within you if you're human.
Well, I think also we had some people on here on the podcast who had really troubled pasts, mm-hmm. who were drug addicts, who were homeless, who did some terrible things, were
sure.
Convicts and criminals.
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to share what your past was like, but if anybody has chapters in their life in the past where they were, convicted of a felony, that has a terrible impact on trying to get an apartment, because everybody does
Yes.
a background check, and getting that expunged is extremely time consuming and expensive. So what would
Yeah.
you recommend to the state legislature or these property owners that we could do to help more people get off the streets and get into housing?
Well, I'm not, I don't want to make this religious, but I will say that, for example, I am a member of the LDS faith and was born and raised in that church. And so I, fortunately, because my brain was so messed up from childhood, I was afraid of the drugs and everything. And I was always medicated enough with the legal drugs. I didn't want to touch the street stuff. So I was fortunate that way and avoided it. But once, we have a lot of LDS people in the legislature, and, they know that it's mercy. Mercy is what should be paramount. And once you've served that time, I work a lot with prisoners, and once you've served your debt to society, let it go. Let it go. You've served your debt to society. Hopefully you've learned your lesson. It is not for you, the landlord, the property management company, whoever. It's not for you to judge and continue to punish and hold that against them. So that's my first point. My second point is, for example, like you said, you talked about expungement. At least they can get it expunged. I will tell you that right now, one of the problems I'm having is I'm trying to get out of the place that I'm in. But although there are laws in place, but they're very difficult, they're huge, and they're hurdles that take like an entire law firm to get over. But if you've been evicted, you can pay your debt and get the eviction eventually expunged or off the record, so it doesn't count against you. If you've been taken to court with an eviction attempt and you win, there is no law or remedy to take that eviction attempt off your record. So when somebody pulls my record and they say, oh, goodness, she's had multiple eviction attempts. Now, I won, and they were bogus, and I can explain every one of them. I can show them the paperwork. But to a landlord, to me, that's just as damning as having an eviction, because it just makes me look like I'm trouble, and I just get lucky and I know how to beat the system. And that's not the truth of it at all. So I would say to the landlord, oh gosh, yeah, you've got to show mercy. You've got to show a little bit of common sense. If you really want to get people off the streets, and you really care about people being housed and people being people, you've got to start treating them like you would your neighbor, like you would your family, like somebody that you cared about. Treat every individual regardless of their past. At some point, you've got to set their past aside and be willing to understand. If you need to understand, okay, well, talk to me about the crimes. Tell me, when you talk to somebody, you can kind of get a feeling for. Hopefully, if you're emotionally intelligent, somewhat, you can get a feeling for whether or not they're truly reformed. And there are scammers out there, but talk to the people, and it's just so cut and dry. Like when you go to apply for a property, you pay your application fee, and they put you through a system of numbers or whatever, and you either make it or you don't. Your credit either makes it or you don't. Your eviction record or a felony either makes it, and nobody bothers to get to know the person to see what's going on now, what happened then. Is this somebody that I really want to?
Isn't that interesting? Because there's all this money spent on caseworkers, and from what I've learned about the caseworker community, it's one of the highest turnover jobs in the state of Utah.
Oh.
People come out of the University of Utah or any university with a psych degree. Oh, I can be a caseworker and earn $15 an hour. Won't that be rewarding? And then they're dealing with people who have severe schizophrenia or psychotic disorders or borderline personality disorders. They're not equipped to deal with these people at all. And then they realize, I'm not able to help this person like I thought I could. I got 40 cases on my docket, and I've got to go see 11 people today, and it's a shit show, honestly.
Yeah.
From every former caseworker I've talked to, it's a complete shit show. And then the mayor's office and the Utah Homeless Services Board, I've listened to their staff meetings. They're like 3 hours long, and they're mostly self-congratulatory, telling each other what a great job they're doing. They're not listening to you. It's not.
No.
They're not listening to the people at the bottom who are receiving the services to get the answers to why their programs are failing again and again.
No.
And so I'm kind of rambling on, but my point is,
No.
if caseworkers could actually get to know the people, and there could be a case management load that was feasible, I believe seniors might want to donate their time as Christians to be
Of course.
caseworkers.
Seniors are often
Yeah.
willing and wonderful.
I think
at
there's a solution to this caseworker shortage, and there's a solution
Sure.
to the lack of human connection in the whole process. And
Absolutely.
I don't think anybody really gives a shit. And I think that's the biggest problem.
I think you nailed it on the head. I couldn't have said it more eloquently myself. But what shocks me is that the majority of the people, I can't say this for sure, but a lot of people that are tenants, especially if they're older, it's because of disability or a drug addiction or what have you, or a criminal record. Maybe they couldn't buy a home or what have you. But what shocks me is that none of the property managers, have any training to deal with mentally ill or hidden disabilities or substance abuse disorders and so forth. And yet they bilk in billions, but the state, the legislators, the property man, nobody wants to put any therapist or psychological help on staff. Why don't we have mental health people on staff? They're starting to do it with the police departments, because the police, have, if you look at how many blacks they kill as opposed to how many mentally ill they kill, the numbers are within like a dozen or two a year. It's just frightening. And so the police are finally starting to figure out, like, we don't have the training. We need to have a mental health person get involved. And I have just a short little story that's a true story of how this might work. There was a old woman who was probably in her 70s. She was schizophrenic, and I don't know if she wasn't on her medications or they weren't working well, but she lived alone, and each night she would take a baseball bat and she would beat the heck out of her walls. Now, she wasn't very strong, so it just made dents, but it was loud. It disturbed the neighbors, and the landlord had compassion and let her stay for a while, but eventually he said, you got to go. You just can't keep beating the walls. You're not going to keep repairing it and so forth. But that community had a therapist that would intervene before they would evict somebody that was vulnerable. And that therapist came and talked to the woman. And she said, what's going on? Why are you beating that? And she said, well, the demons come out. And she said, and she named them, and she could, tell you who they were and where they came out and so forth. And she said, well, it's important to have protection. She's like, yeah, this is, she had this bat. And she said, well, I'll tell you what, that bat is a problem because it makes a lot of noise, and it hurts the demons, but it hurts the walls too. But I have a bat that would hurt the demons, but it wouldn't hurt the walls. Would you be willing to try my bat? And she said, well, yeah, sure. Now, this woman's not stupid. I'm not trying to condescend to people with schizophrenia, but she took out one of those rubber bats that kids, whack each other
Oval
with,
ball bats,
yeah. And it was a big one. It looked kind of scary from a distance, but she handed it to her, and the lady's like, wow, this is even bigger than the bat I have. Problem solved. She stayed there a long time, and she would beat the walls. Nobody knew it, and she felt safe. Whatever. I mean,
Wow.
It was that simple. Mental health and poverty are the two huge things that require empathy, and nobody in the real estate industry is that I know of is really specializing in empathy. But you get therapists and psychiatrists and people involved, and you might see some change and some retention. They could also be the communicator, the intermediary. If you've got somebody who's not being paid by the state or the property management company who's a therapist, and they want to evict because this person's a problem, a therapist could say, look, this is why this is a symptom, and it's, you see it as they're being difficult or abusive or whatever they accuse you of. The therapist can explain how, no, this is a symptom of schizophrenia, or this is a bipolar episode. This is what it looks like. She is in treatment. Here's what we're doing, and here's what I think. That compassion being inserted in could be helpful in so many different levels.
Yeah, I think bottom line is just people need to talk more.
Yeah, there needs to be communication.
There needs to be better communication, and there needs to be better, more compassion, I think, but also a sense that the trials and the difficulty of different human lives all vary greatly,
Mm-hmm.
and we need to meet people where they're at. The condescending that happens, whether it's a therapist or a caseworker or a landlord or a tenant or whatever, not trying to meet people where they're at and look at them eye to eye and realize this is another human being. This is another person who was once a baby just like I was and was raised just like I was. I think that we're losing some of that humanity perhaps, and that started
yes.
during COVID, and it's kind of being exacerbated. But I think we need to return to that, and I think it's whether you believe we need more therapists or we need more faith-based workers, we just need more people who are willing to talk to each other. And I think a lot of faith-based workers are willing to hand out those lunches and hand out those dinners or volunteer in a food line. But I really strongly believe that there could be a movement where more people just go out and talk to the people who are facing these psychological demons or problems that they're faced with,
Mm-hmm.
and form a helping community in that direction.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And if the tenants were encouraged to unite and then get therapists involved to help represent and be their voice, because when you're sick and when you're ill, especially in the throes of an episode, whether it's a psychotic or a manic episode, you are not your own best advocate. In fact, you're kind of the enemy. And it's really difficult to advocate yourself. And these people are often truly alone. Their families are long gone.
Yeah, that's
They
actually
don't
a very
have friends,
commonality.
thin
So
support.
many people
Yeah.
and it's not that they're not smart
Oh,
or
no.
or good looking or intelligent or anything. It's like their social fabric, their family structure has most of the time when they're on the streets has just been wiped out.
Or in
And-
prison. They go to
Yeah.
prison and no one, their family doesn't ever want to have anything to do with them again. Whatever, yeah.
Yeah, that's
You're right.
very common, and so yeah, I really appreciate you coming on, Maya, and providing all these ideas and potential solutions. And I really hope people from the Utah Homeless Services Board. By the way, I don't mean you don't give a shit in terms of what you're doing. I know every single person on that board has the very, very best of intentions. But I think a requirement to serve on that board would be to talk to 5 homeless people every single month. I think if you're going to take that position and you're going to advocate for homeless people, I would just recommend highly go out and talk to 5 people who have been homeless and stop using that as sort of a stepping stone to a higher political position. And then I think it would be a much better service for the people who are facing that.
Well, can I just add one thing to that too?
Yeah.
And it would be difficult because of privacy things, but if they could also look at the next 5 evictions, maybe go to the courts and see the people lined up for eviction in court every day. There's tons of them, and talk to them and talk, a lot of them don't show up. They don't know their rights. They just get kicked out and they don't know where to go to court or how. Criminals have more rights, by the
Yeah.
way, than renters. But talk to the people who are about to be evicted and talk
Yeah.
to them about what resources did you find or try and find, and why are you being evicted, and what could have prevented it. And I think they'd be shocked
There you
at
go.
just the thin evidence and the thin things and so forth. And I think the mentally ill, the hidden disabilities, and the elderly and so forth, they need special protections in place. They need, you shouldn't be able to evict somebody, especially when they're vulnerable, without some special procedures in place to protect them, especially because, again, they have symptoms that can be difficult, and it's not their fault. And they're not great advocates for themselves, and they often are too sick to know where to go to get help. And so we can't be just trashing people like them and throwing them onto the streets without giving them special protections, So,
Yeah.
yeah, good ideas. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, hopefully people will listen to this and read the story. So I appreciate you having the
Please
courage to
do.
come on. I really do.
Sure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Thanks, Maya. All right. And if you want to support our coverage and at least just know more about what's going on, go out to utahstories.com, subscribe to our free digital newsletter. That's at utahstories.com. And if you want to be a contributing supporter of our journalism, we're continuing to do investigative journalism into what I call the homeless industrial complex. And it won't be called that if there weren't so many people making so much money off of it. You can consider subscribing to Utah Stories magazine or becoming a member at